Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. Hi, I'm Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. You're listening to part 2 of Uniqueness, how to find that uniqueness and how to push it forward in a way that customers pay attention to you. This is a 2-part episode, and in the last episode we covered how you can go about finding the uniqueness for your business, your product, or your service. And the second thing we covered was the reasoning behind why different products and services need their own uniqueness. In this episode, we look at what you're going to do, how you're going to test your uniqueness. Once you've settled on your uniqueness, how are you going to test it? What is likely to happen to a woman's bikini when she's surfing? If you're a woman, surfing with a bikini was slightly out of the question. You'd be in the waves, walk out of the water, and you've literally lost your bottoms, said business owner Anna Jerstrom. So Jerstrom decided to create sexy, bright bikinis. And the uniqueness? Bikinis that stay on no matter how rough the surf. And with this single-minded pursuit, investment banker Anna Jerstrom started a business called Calavera. But wouldn't she need to test the uniqueness before she began? In almost every case, testing a uniqueness is completely unnecessary. One of the biggest reasons why you shouldn't be bothered with testing a uniqueness is because you're unlikely to have any competition. Let's take the uniqueness of Calavera, for example. Why did Jerstrom start the company? Surely she should have been able to find some bikinis that didn't slide off in the surf. Even with the power of the internet at her disposal, she was still running into dead ends. It means that there will be hundreds, if not thousands, of customers who are also finding it hard to get a decent product. That line of thought may not sound reasonable to you, but let's look at the alternative, shall we? Let's say you decide to sell a product. Maybe it's an information product that's based on presentations. When you look at Amazon.com, you're likely to find at least 5,000 books and presentations. Do you really want to go through every sales page trying to find out what is unique about each of those presentation products? Clients have a similar mindset. They don't care about doing such extensive research either. They just want to show up to your business, whether online or offline, and they want you to explicitly tell them why you're different from the competition. Whether you have a product, a training, or a service, your uniqueness doesn't need testing simply because it's impossible to test. But there's another good reason why you shouldn't bother to test. The biggest reason why you should just go ahead and run your uniqueness is because the competition is lazy or confused or both. Most companies are clearly at sea when asked what makes them unique. If you have a uniqueness factor in place, that puts you way ahead of your competitors. However, there's also another reason why you can go ahead quite happily. But even if your competition has a uniqueness, it's not of much use unless they employ it on a very frequent basis. A uniqueness itself is not enough for clients to remember what is being said. Volvo, the car company, is known for their safe cars because they ran endless ads about safety. Domino's made $1 billion selling pizza because of their 30 minutes or it's free slogan. They pushed out that message over and over and over again. And yet think for a second about your competitors right now. Can you quickly bring up their uniqueness? It's not enough to have a uniqueness. You have to do so much more. In fact, you have to take these 3 steps to make sure the uniqueness does its job properly. Step 1, you have to consistently get the word out. Step 2, you have to state the position of the competition. And step 3, you have to state your own position. Let's go through the steps one by one. Step 1, getting the word out. What does getting the word out mean? It means that a uniqueness can't just sit around. It has to be repeated in some form or the other over and over and over again. If you've listened to the 3-month vacation podcast, for example, when I talk about 5000 BC, I will repeat the same thing over and over again. I will say 5000 BC is a place where introverts meet because they feel safe. The same message will be sent out in articles, in books, in just about every medium possible. And the message never changes much. Keeping that message consistent is what's critical. If you keep changing the message simply because you're bored of it, you've lost more than half of the uniqueness battle. You want to make sure that the uniqueness is as simple as possible and then continue to mention it everywhere. When you consider that you may have more than one product or service, you have to pick your battles. For instance, the uniqueness of psychotactics is tiny increments. But often the overall company uniqueness is of little value to the client. And that's because they are more focused on the product or the service that they're buying at that moment. So yes, it's fine to have a company uniqueness, but the most important thing that you have to figure out is that at this very moment the client is buying a specific product, a specific service. And not only that, but you also have to have the medium where you're going to promote this uniqueness. So let's take the 3-month vacation podcast, for example. You will notice that I will consistently end with the uniqueness of 5000 BC, which is the membership site. However, while I'm explaining something in the podcast or in an article, I will be sure to talk about the uniqueness of, say, psychotactics courses and how they're not just information but about skill. See, I did it again. You don't want to bring up the uniqueness of every single product or service. You want to make sure you have a few entry points. For us at Psychotactics, the entry points that need to be stressed are the brain audit, 5000 BC, and the courses. It's not like the rest of the products and services don't matter. They do. But the uniqueness of those products or services are on the sales page or on the sales pitch itself. If it wasn't clear, what I'm saying is that you have to have doorways. You have to have 2 or 3 products that you're consistently harping upon. These are the doorways the clients enter through. And then they find the other products, the other services, the other training. So having these doorways is very critical. As I mentioned earlier, 5000 BC, the brain audit, they are the main doorways, and then clients come to buy other stuff. So trying to harp on every single product uniqueness is completely useless. You could have a dozen uniquenesses for a dozen products. But that doesn't mean you should be beating that drum for every single one of those products. Pick 1 or 2 or even 3 of your services or products and then keep driving them home consistently. Keep hammering them home in pre-selected areas of your marketing. But that is only the first part of making sure your uniqueness is heard. To guarantee that you get the point across, you have to state the position of your competition. So how do you go about stating the position of your competition? Ever notice how shiny Harley-Davidson bikes tend to be? The reason for their shiny nature is probably the diligence of the bike owner, but equally, it's how the bike has been positioned in the Harley owner's mind. Harley owners have been known to truck their bikes across the country and then ride them locally. After all, the bikes have to be in a pristine condition at all times. The BMW bike owners, on the other hand, seem to favor the dust and the dirt. They push their bikes across all sorts of punishing conditions. Even if the above description of BMW versus Harley is not 100% correct, it demonstrates the difference. And uniqueness is a point of difference. To make sure you get the point of difference across, you need to have the competition clearly in your sights. Now, if you have $1 million promotion budget, you can continue to mention your slogan, but if you're a small business, you tend to get very few chances, which is why it's important to bring the competition in when you're describing your own point of uniqueness. So first, you have to pick your enemy. The enemy may not be a company. It could be a way of doing things. So here's the way I position the enemy. I say, other courses give you a money-back guarantee, but don't give you a guarantee of skill. Notice there are no names. I'm not taking on anyone in particular. I'm simply taking on an aspect of online courses. So let's say you ran a yoga class and you wanted to position the enemy. And you said, other yoga classes have a lot of yoga routines, but they don't necessarily pay attention to what can injure you long after you've left the yoga class. Now you're defining the enemy. Now you're defining that competition. Let's take a third example. Let's talk about microphones. Let's say you're selling a product like microphones. You say, other microphones pick up unwanted noise and reflections, especially in a bad-sounding, untreated room. And in a flash, you've got the client to understand what's the difference between you and the other people, even though you haven't said anything about your own business. You have positioned the enemy. And once you've defined the enemy's characteristics, you know what you're battling against. No doubt the enemy will have many flaws, but it's your job to pick one. Uniqueness is about one thing. And the moment you pick the opponent's flaw, you can easily position yourself against them. Which takes us to the third step, doesn't it? In step 1, we looked at how you needed to get the word out. In step 2, you looked at how you need to position the enemy. And now you have to state your own position. That's step 3. So how do you state your own position? Your position is the exact opposite of the flaw that you've picked. If they, that is the competition, work too slowly, then you work quickly. If they give you 200 pages of information, then you give only the 10 or 15 pages needed. If they sell ripe bananas, you sell them green, and so that they don't ripen too quickly. When we referred to the Calavera bikinis earlier, Anna Jerstrom, who was the owner, her enemy was the terribly fitting bikinis. And her position was bikinis that stay on no matter how rough the surf. Now, you can do this very easily. You can pick up anything off your desk and ask yourself why you use that particular product. And what you'll find is that you are very clear about some of these facts, which is, what is the enemy's position? So why am I using this sharpener? What is the enemy's position? Why am I using this sharpener? Why am I using this microphone instead of some other microphone? Why am I wearing these shoes instead of those shoes? And what you have is a very clear definition of the enemy and your own position. So it's not enough to just state it. You have to have these other things as well, which is state the enemy's position, state your position. And this doesn't just apply to products, it applies to services or presentations as well. So for instance, when I give a presentation, I want to stand out from the rest of the presenters. So I talk about how businesses make $1 gazillion, but we make more than enough, and we take 3 months off every year. Not working while we're away, not checking email, but completely free on vacation, doing absolutely nothing. When you state the competitor's position and you contrast it with your own, you see the lights going off in the prospect's brain. They can see the difference because they have that contrast, they have that comparison. And this brings us to the testing bit again. How do you know if your uniqueness is truly unique? You can see it. You can see the nodding of the customer's head. When you state your uniqueness, the clients tend to see the difference. They see the difference between your competitor and you get this smile, this slight nod of the head. You know that you've struck a chord with the client. Oh, and there is the echo. When you ask the client what you do, they should be able to echo your words perfectly. Listen for that echo. Are they missing out important bits? If they are, your uniqueness may not be as simple as you think. You'll need to edit it quite a bit. If they are totally off tangent, then you haven't made your point as precise as possible. If you run into your client a month or 6 months from now, and they can echo your uniqueness perfectly, then you've got a uniqueness that has resonated with them, and it's truly a point of difference. Finally, a lot of uniqueness comes about when you're not expecting it. That line about how our courses are different from every other online course, that wasn't something I figured out while sitting down and going through this exercise of uniqueness. I probably said it in response to a question, or maybe on some interview when I was trying to explain what makes our courses at Psychotactics so different. And this is how it is. A lot of your uniqueness is going to pop up when you least expect it. So make sure that you write it down when you hear yourself saying something interesting about your product or your service. Nonetheless, as a starting point, defining the enemy is a very crucial exercise. It's only when you define the enemy that you can clarify your own position in a memorable manner. To get your uniqueness really charging down the road, you need to consider all 3 points. Step 1, you have to consistently get the word out. Step 2, you have to state the position of your competition. And step 3, you have to state your own position. And that's how uniqueness fits, just like a Calavera bikini. Oh, one more thing. Calavera closed down its business in 2017. They decided they wanted to do something different after a good 5 years of running the business, and so they decided to shut shop. So this brings us to the end of this podcast. We had it in 2 parts. If you didn't listen to the first part, go and listen. If you did listen to the first part, listen to it again. Uniqueness is so critical, and so few businesses seem to have it, and they always struggle. They always say, we're not getting the best price possible. Well, why would I pay you more if I don't know what's unique about you? So go out there, listen to the first part, listen to the second part, listen to the first part, well, you know what you have to do. So let's summarize what we've covered so far in both of the episodes. The first thing that we looked at was how do you find your uniqueness for your business or your product or service. We looked at the grasses that the wildebeest graze on, and that was because of Aldonio Lengai, the mountain of God. And most businesses don't have this mountain of God, this uniqueness that's inbuilt into their system, so they have to create their uniqueness. And this is where the problem begins, because when you ask clients, what is my uniqueness, or you sit down and make a list, what you get are a whole bunch of things, and you have to pick one thing. And you go, how am I going to pick one thing? Well, be like David Attenborough. Just drop to the forest floor, pick that uniqueness, and then expand on that uniqueness, drive that uniqueness home. It's a great starting point. You might not think it's a great starting point, but right now you have no other starting point, so might as well have a slightly better than average starting point. Pick something and then explain it. And that's how you start off. When we started 5000 BC, I didn't have a uniqueness. We didn't have a uniqueness for many years. I didn't even know that there were so many introverts hanging around until we started having workshops and we looked, and everyone in the room was an introvert except me. Well, almost everyone except me. And then in 5000 BC was the same thing. Now, 5000 BC was always a safe place. It was always be kind, be helpful, or be gone. That was always the motto. But this whole bit about introverts and introverts finding it safe, that was what came later. And that's what goes in the podcast consistently. When you look at 5000 BC, you'll find there are a whole bunch of points. And these go in bullet points, but they don't become your uniqueness. From those bullet points, pick one of them and make sure that stands out. And that's how you go about creating that uniqueness. Pick something, pick one thing. This takes us to the second point, which is, does every product and every service need to have a uniqueness? And the answer is yes. It's just like a family. Everyone in the family has the same last name. That's everyone belongs to the same company. But they all have different uniquenesses. And this is true not just for every product or service, but every version of your product. So Photoshop 1 has to be different from Photoshop 2, which has to be different from Photoshop 3. Otherwise, it's impossible to sell the product. You can't just say, hey, this is Photoshop. We've had to do this for the brain audit. We've had version 1, version 2, version 3.2. If and when we have version 4, it has to be different from version 3.2. Otherwise, why bother buying it? So it's not just the products or the different products that need a uniqueness factor, but also versions of the product. So if you've got a course that's changing all the time, like for instance, the article writing course now is version 2.0, that uniqueness is different from the first one, which incidentally wasn't very clear. But now we say, well, you can learn how to write an article in 90 minutes or less. And this is a magazine quality article. That's a clear uniqueness. And it exists for version 2 of the article writing course. So you have to be very clear about it every time you put out a new version or for different products on your website. And finally, when you have a uniqueness, is it important to test it? You can't test it. That's the whole reality of things. You can't go around testing 50 or 60 or 5,000 books that exist on Amazon. You can't go around testing all the services and all the products and all the workshops. It's impossible to know exactly what makes them unique. And one of the biggest problems with uniquenesses is that most people are too lazy or too silly about their uniqueness. So you never get to know what their uniqueness is anyway. I mean, check it. Just look at the stuff that you're dealing with, your competition. It's not very clear what makes them unique. So how do you go about creating that uniqueness? Well, there are those three things. The first thing is you have to consistently get the word out. Notice how I get it out over and over again in the podcast, in the books, over and over and over again. The second is that you have to state the position of the enemy. And the third is you have to state your own position. All of these three things have to exist if you are to get your uniqueness across. And that brings us to the end of this 3-month vacation podcast. And the reason why the 3-month vacation podcast is so binge-worthy is because it sticks to 3 points. And it then summarizes those points. And then it tells you what you should be doing. So what is the one thing that you should be doing? What is the one action you should take? I would say you should start at positioning your enemy. Figure out what is it that they're doing differently. And you don't have to go after a single company. You can go after a position like the enemy does this, we do that. That's where I would start. I would start with the enemy. I would start with their position and then put in my own position. And that's the one thing that you can do. And that's what makes this podcast so binge-worthy, and which is why you should be telling your friends about it, which is why you should leave some reviews on iTunes as well. But anyway, what's happening in Psychotactics land? Let's find out. There was a very interesting debate going on in 5000 BC, which is the membership site. And it was about the cartooning course. And it was like, what ROI am I going to get on cartooning? And it seems like it's very difficult to answer the question. What ROI are you going to get on it? What return on investment are you going to get on it? And the answer is that you don't have to get a return on investment in terms of money. I have learned how to cook really well, dance really well, do so many things over the years, and not all of them have directly been, okay, I'm going to put in $500, I'm going to put in $1,000, and I'm going to get a $3,000 return. Sometimes the return is way beyond money. And I'm not pitching this as, okay, you cannot get a return on investment on cartoons. There are people in the course that will go out and draw cartoons for other people, and they get paid for it, and they get their money back. But this is not about money back. This is about learning a skill that you thought you could never have. I mean, you go into a cafe and you say, is there a doctor here? Then they go, yes. Is there a singer here? Yes. There's a writer. There is every kind of profession. And you say, is there a cartoonist? And you're the only one. And you thought you couldn't draw. Well, everybody can draw, and everyone can draw exceedingly well, and that's what the cartooning course is all about. So 3rd of June, that's probably the day that this podcast goes out. 3rd of June is when you get to sign up to the cartooning course. It starts on the 21st of August. It's not very difficult. It's a lot of fun, and you have these really great groups that we put together that you will find only on Psychotactics. Really fun people. So that's it, 3rd of June. Psychotactics.com/DaVinci. That's DAVINCI. Go there on the 3rd of June, sign up, and you'll start cartooning. And by 2018, you're going to be a cartoonist. Yes, it's skill, not information. But if it's information, or rather information products that you want to create, well, that's the 21st of July. That's the date that we are releasing 35 copies of the home study of the information products. So 21st of July. Before that, you have to get on the waiting list because we do a little check on our side. So you have to go to the psychotactics.com info products page, and there is a waiting list there. Go there, put your name down, and then on the 21st of July, you get a chance to get the copy of the Info Products course. So this course is about how to get your clients coming back. The reason why clients keep coming back to Psychotactics is the way we construct the information product. So this isn't a course about how to distribute your info products and do all that stuff. Instead, it is how to construct it so that it's very powerful, so that whether it's a small product or a large product, clients get to the end point. Because once they get to the end point, they then want to read the second one. They want to join another course. They want to buy another product. It's about consumption. It's about how to design it so that clients really want to continue reading, continue listening, continue to get to the end. What we tend to do is we bail out in the middle. And this course is designed to show you how that consumption works. And it's done in a very entertaining way, which means that you're going to get to the end as well. That's the Info Products course. There's always 5000 BC, and go to 5000bc.com. You know why you have to go there, right? The uniqueness is that it's about introverts. It's about where introverts feel very safe, and you will enjoy your time in 5000 BC. There have been members that have been around since 2003. That's a long time, isn't it? And especially on the internet. I'll say bye for now, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye. Still listening? In an earlier episode, someone asked me, how do you meditate? And I know I've been talking about this meditation for a while, but I've been hooked on it, and it has worked really well for me. So I'm Mr. Calm now. I don't get hassled that often. When I say hassle that often, I actually think of the times when I'm getting hassled, when I'm getting angry, and that's like once in a month maybe. And even then I'm like upset that I'm getting upset. Anyway, how do I meditate? The most important thing that you've got to figure out is what is your busiest time of day. When is your brain racing at 1,000,000 miles per hour? For Renuka, that is about 5 p.m. For me, it's 4 a.m. So you have to first figure out what is the busiest time of your day, and that's when you meditate. And you think, why would I do that? Because that's the whole point. The whole point is to bring your brain down to a halt. And of course, it's not going to happen easily because that's what the whole thing is about. It's about this car hurtling down at 100 miles per hour, and now you're supposed to bring it down to like 0. And it won't happen because a car doesn't go from 100 to 0 in 1 second. It kind of slides for a while, and that's with brakes. In your case, in meditation, it's going to take a while. It's going to take 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. In my case, it takes about 40 minutes. And you say, well, who's got the time? And I can say the same thing. I didn't have the time either. But the benefit has been so great that I'm putting in those 40 minutes. Sometimes I put in 30 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes. But every day at 4 o'clock, that's when I meditate. And I don't sit down. I don't do the stuff that everyone recommends. I just lie in bed and I pull the duvet over myself, and then that's how I meditate. And you'd say, well, I'd fall asleep. Not if your brain is going at 100 miles per hour. You're not going to fall asleep. I can assure you that. Unless you're exhausted, you're not going to fall asleep. Your brain is going to go slower and slower and slower. And to me, that's the whole thing about meditation. It has helped me get that grounding, and I think it will help you as well. So try it and let me know how you go. Again, busiest time of day. You don't have to sit, you can sleep, pull a duvet, try it for yourself, and give yourself some time to get that momentum going. Don't try to get there in like 5 minutes because it's not going to happen. That's it now. It's time for me to do my other activity, which is go for a long walk, drink some coffee, and then get back to the rest of the day. It's 6 degrees out there, like really cold. Well, it's cold for everybody else. Supposedly I'm Superman. I just wear my shorts and t-shirts, and I wear my polar bear t-shirt. So when people say, how do you now feel cold? I point out to the polar bear. So that's it. I'm off for my polar bear walk, and I'll see you soon on the next podcast. Bye-bye.